one of the co-founders of the Waiting Room. I founded the space with my partner, David, who's not here tonight, and then my co-curator, Lily Erb, is right here, helping me run this space. And then our intern, Abby's over here, videoing. So yeah, the Waiting Room, we started in February, so it's a brand new space. It was like a dusty basement that wasn't being used at all, and so with help from my family, we built all of the walls out, and so it's the gallery, but it's also artist studios, which fund the gallery, and so this is our second show, so it's been really special to have Nas have this amazing exhibition. So without further ado, we'll get into the artist talk. So I have the pleasure of introducing Nasir. Nasir Anthony Montalvo, born in 1999, is an essayist and memory worker based in Kansas City, Missouri. Montalvo uses archival praxis, digital media, popular education, and written word to move Black diasporic audiences towards life and a true dream beyond social platitudes. Montalvo's art has been exhibited locally and nationally in coffee shops, bookstores, community fairs, and artist galleries. Their art and archival research has also been published in NPR, Syllabus, 60 Inches from Center, The Advocate, Teen Vogue, and Casey Studio, along with being used in curricula at Johns Hopkins University, Columbia University, and the North Kansas City School District. Montalvo holds a 2024 and 2026 studio residency at Charlotte Street and has been awarded fellowships and artistic grants with the Opportunity Agenda, Diaspora, Solidarities Lab, Gray Area, and Arts KC. Montalvo is most recently founder of BQKC, a community archive of Black queer Midwestern history. Montalvo is queer, Afro-Borican, and from Tennessee, Florida. Without further ado, I'll introduce Nasir.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for coming. Y'all can come closer, there's a lot of space.
We can also sit on this if you want.
Yeah,
It's just just a bunch of drywall, yeah. Yeah.
Oh my god, it's so packed.
Yeah.
Thank y'all so much for coming. If y'all know me, I'm gonna keep it real casual because I'm not a public speaker at all. But I'm excited to tell you a little bit more about the exhibition and my archival work. And yeah, before I get started, I feel like it's important to use the platform I have right now to talk about Palestine, especially because some of that is present in the exhibition. But instead of me trying to explain the connections and the linkages between the genocide happening there and this project, I'm gonna read y'all this article, some snippets from it. This is an article in a publication called Hyphen, written by MZ Adnan. And after I read the publication, I just hope y'all will join me in a moment of silence and reflection. Over the course of a month in early 2002, during the Second Intifada, Israeli occupation forces raided and occupied the Palestinian Ministry of Culture 6-story building in Ramallah. When Rula Shawan, director of the archive department at the time, and her team returned to the office after the ending of a curfew imposed on the city, everything had been destroyed. Among the ruins were paintings, the ministry's main server and a library, as well as the archive of Palestinian cinema held by the department. Israeli soldiers had stolen laptops, pilfered cash, and removed hard disks from computers. The stench of urine permeated the office, coming from flower vases and bottles that had intentionally been left on desks. It was a miserable situation, Shawan says. Shawan's experience at the archive was not the first instance of Israeli looting and destruction of Palestinian cultural heritage, the history of which stretches back to the Nakba in 1948, with the plunder of Palestinian books and manuscripts from public and private collections, to the present assault on Gaza, which has resulted in the loss of many archives and cultural heritage sites. The genocide ensures that we do not retain access to our knowledge, our own writings, our own history, says Mehdi Sabah, an architectural scholar and co-creator of the Palestine Festival of Literature. It's a way to sever people from the place that they're from. As of November 2024, UNESCO has verified damage to 69 sites in Gaza since October 2023, among them archaeological areas, monuments, and buildings of historical and artistic interest. A preliminary report issued in January by librarians and archivists with Palestine documented the names of heritage advocates killed by Israeli bombardment. Moran Tarazi, an archivist of a photography studio, the first in Gaza, was killed in October with his wife and infant granddaughter while sheltering at the St. Porphyrius Orthodox Church. The loss of records, court documents, and the records of educational institutions that exist solely on local servers after the bombings of schools and universities has highlighted for Rula Shawan the everyday implications of the archive. The tragedy of losing not only materials related to collective memory and national identity, but also those documents necessary for daily and future use. Personal memories in the form of photo albums and family records are gone. It is under the rubble, Shawan says, the things that still keep us linked to our past. One of Shawan's frequent collaborators, an archivist named Fadi Abdel Hadi, spoke to her 5 weeks after the beginning of Israeli shelling and bombardment in October 2023. Abdel Hadi had been a collector of artistic works, plays, and music, as well as materials belonging to the media department of the Palestine Liberation Organization. He told Shawan, who had asked him earlier to preserve the film materials in his possession, not to worry. I put all the hard disks and cables in one bag, and I told my wife that this bag is more important than our clothes. Shortly afterwards, he wrote to Shawan on Facebook Messenger, informing her that his house and part of the archive he had spent years collecting were destroyed in an Israeli airstrike. He lost his whole legacy. So while we're gathering in this space tonight, I just want us to think about what would it mean if this exhibition was destroyed, if the people had contributed to our memory of SOAKIE'S and Black queer histories in Kansas City, any history in Kansas City, were destroyed and we never got to know that. So we could take a minute of silence and then we'll get into the talk. Okay, thank y'all for indulging me in that. I'm gonna sip on my wine. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna keep things real casual. I'm just gonna talk about how this work started, talk a little bit about the exhibition, and then there's a lot of people I was gonna try and talk about certain works in there, but I might just have to do that out here. Y'all just gonna have to figure it out, okay? And then we'll also do Q&A at the end if anybody has questions, but I don't know, I want this to be like dialogic as well, so if you have questions while I'm talking, just raise your hand and we can chat. But yeah, so all of this work is part of this project I began when I first moved to Kansas City around 2021. I'm originally from Kissimmee, Florida, Central Florida, like right outside Orlando. If anybody's watched the Florida Project, that's like where I'm from. And then I went to college in Hoboken, right across the river from New York. So all that to say, when I got this job opportunity to come to Kansas City, I was scared it was going to be like tumbleweeds, racist, and just shitty. So I was like, when I got here, I wanted to find my community ASAP. So got here, and I was like, okay, I'm going on Instagram, Facebook, social media, Google, all the things, and trying to find Black queer history or Black queer organizations and people. Wasn't finding nothing. There was like no hits at all. The only hit that I found on Google was like this Reddit thread that was like, I love Reddit, child. But they were like, living in KCMO as a Black LGBT person, and then the description was like, you know, where do I go to find people? And the replies were like, no one will care if you're Black and queer, like you could come to Missy B's and stuff. I'm like, that's not the answer we're looking for. So it became this larger question for me, like what is the prevalence or existence of Black queer people in Kansas City at all? Which I knew there had to have been something, but there was just nothing in the digital about it. So I started calling around to local archives and libraries, and they also were like, we don't have nothing. I was like, okay. So one of my last calls was the Gay and Lesbian Archives of Mid-America. And we chatted on the phone. All of their archive is like only physically available. And I was only able to go because I was working a 9 to 5, but it was like hybrid. So I was like saying I was working when I was there. But I'm mentioning that because I was already a barrier, I feel like. But they were like, we have some stuff, but not a lot. So out of their like, I don't know, 600,000 materials that they have there, and they're like AC controlled back room with a robotic arm or whatever. All their Black queer materials they rolled out on like a little cart for me. That was everything. So on the cart were like some of the first like documented Black drag queens of Kansas City. This organization that was fighting racism amidst gay men, and this public access cable program on American Cablevision called Out There, which was like an LGBT variety show. That wasn't inherently Black and queer, but Leah Hopkins, who's a Black lesbian, founder of the Kansas City Pride Parade, was in the material. So I felt like all of it was important, and none of it was online. Like they had no plans to digitize it. It's just like very old school, old fashioned. And there were a lot of like, I had to sign a lot of contracts and agreements to even get to viewing the material. So I just felt like, you know, for me, who's coming outside of Kansas City, I really don't have a deep connection to this place yet, I guess, at all. For anybody trying to find anything out about their friends, their family, and they work a 9 to 5, it's already out of the question. And then if they do get past that, then they have to go through all these like loopholes. So basically what I wanted to do was digitize all of the materials and like write articles up. I was like working for a Black newspaper at the time. So I just wanted to like make these materials like available online so that if someone in my shoes were to Google now, Black LGBT Kansas City, something would come up. So I spent all of 2022 writing like long form articles about this research that I was like, they were really well received. And I didn't want to stop there. So I was like, because I had all the materials like digitized, I now have these like photos that I can like print and do whatever with them. So I started doing exhibits, local coffee shops and bookstores. Never done shit like that before ever. So I was just like, it was just something I felt like was needed, you know, to take up space to show people that Black queer history does exist here, you know? I just did it out of the need. And those were really well received too. And I started working with a local health organization here and did like a larger exhibition, and it was like a party. And I was just starting to see the archival material, how it can be used not only as a space for reflection, but also like to build community, to build power. And so when I was wrapping up my research at the Gay and Lesbian Archives, there was one ad I came across in like this LGBT magazine called Case Exposures, and it said SOAKIE'S, Kansas City's only Black gay bar. And I was like, what the hell? Like, what is this? But they didn't know anything about it. They were like, I don't know. So I had already tried, like, in Google, all these different things for Black queer Kansas City, Black LGBT, whatever. But I had never tried SOAKIE'S, obviously. Still nothing came up, but there was one hit by this woman named Starla Carr, who's in the exhibition. This article she wrote for the Hip Hop Dance Almanac, where she talked about her life in Kansas City, like trying to be a rapper. And some of it she talked about SOAKIE'S, and her Instagram was linked. And so I messaged her there, and like from there, it's where I got introduced to all of the others in the community. And yeah, I started talking to a lot of people and heard their pain points of working with these local archives and libraries as well. I think one of the things that stood out to me was that they felt like specifically organizations like PBS would go to their community and want to write. I feel like ballroom has become a really big, like permeating popular culture now. And so PBS has gone to them multiple times, like let's do a special on you on the ballroom scene in Kansas City. But they feel like the process is very extractive. You know, they're not going to get compensated for featuring the documentary. And considering the history with SOAKIE'S, as some of you might have seen as you gone through the exhibition, it's shut down by the Power and Light development. So that context, one of the spaces they built and were basically taken away, why am I going to continue giving y'all my story and nothing to show in return? So I felt like it was important. Their stories were still important, but I needed to share it in a way that honored them and tried to repair our historical record, but also in ways that like subverted institutions and universities through building power and through advocating for these reparations, turning the archive into a radical active process than a passive collection process. So BQKC launched as an archive in 2024 on March 1st. With a party, of course. And BQKC launched with 3 collections, the Gary Carrington collection, the Starla Carr collection, and the Tisha Taylor collection. These are just 3 elders who had a lot of materials pertaining to around SOAKIE'S and Black queer community in the 90s and thousands, but also who are figureheads of the community. What's particularly important about BQKC is that I'm not doing things like the Gay and Lesbian Archives or the Black Archives, or usually how these institutional archives function. So this archive functions on a licensing model that I created through using like theory and abolition and such, but also working with some pro bono lawyers. So usually with institutional archives, when you get to an archive, you give up all your material and your intellectual property and copyright over the material, and it's usually on a donation basis. You're not compensated in return. So with BQKC, all of the elders have given me a partial right or license to use the material for educational and charitable purposes, and that's it. So they still remain the sole copyright owners of the material. Basically what they're doing is loaning the material to me to get digitized as a free service, and then I'm getting it back to them. But on top of that, I also spent a lot of time doing fundraising. So the 3 elders in total were given a reparative stipend of $2,000 for giving to the archive. And really all that is to show if my little bitty ass archive can give $2,000 to others in the community, surely these large institutions can pay folks for giving to the archive. So yeah, so that's like the core of how I'm trying to operate the archive, but of course I'm trying to do a lot of different things with it, which I'll talk about at the end. But transitioning to the exhibition itself, which y'all came for, this exhibition is called SOAKIE'S Was Home. A lot of the exhibitions I've done in the past have been around the archive when I launched the archive in March 2024. I, of course, was showing some of this material, but a lot of it too was trying to debut the archive and what I was trying to do. This is also my first solo gallery exhibition, so thank you to the waiting room for this opportunity. And so, what was I saying? Oh, all of the material. Usually before my exhibitions have been around the archive and just to learn, but I've never really just done an exhibition on SOAKIE'S and really taken it there with the themes that I'm trying to get across, gentrification. So yeah, SOAKIE'S Was Home tells the story of SOAKIE'S, which is a Black gay bar in downtown Kansas City from '93 to 2004. SOAKIE'S was actually an Italian sandwich shop owned by the mafia, the Italian mafia here. Specifically a mobster, Salvatore Ronaldo. And he opened the sandwich shop in the 60s, like in 1968, I believe. And basically it started turning into this like gay bar because people started going to SOAKIE'S to pregame because there was another Black bar called Connections like right up the street or something. So people would go to SOAKIE'S to pregame and then go there. And I guess the mob was really nice to gay people because they started like forming relationships, and he was cool chit-chatting with the folks. And so he started telling people that he was getting ready to shut down the bar in the 90s. He was saying like it really wasn't making money. But two people in the community, Jerry Colston and Eric Robinson, were like, don't shut the sandwich shop down. What if, instead of us just using this as a place to pregame, we turn this into a nightclub at night? And Salvatore was like, okay, fuck it. But y'all just gotta fundraise for it and make all that happen yourselves. So they did. They poured a ton of their resources into the marketing, gutting one of the back rooms and turning it into a dressing room, taking out like I think a pool table. I think they put in a dance floor. They like extended the outside of the bar with like curtains and stuff to make like the outside like an extension of the bar because it was like pretty small, a dive bar. And thus SOAKIE'S was born and was this cool third space right in downtown for Black queer people. And it was on 1308 Main Street, roughly where Guardhouse is sitting. So yeah, it was up for like 10 or so years and then shut down because of the power line development. And to my knowledge, the owners of SOAKIE'S weren't paid out. I think they were actually evicted. And so because of that, they didn't get a payout. And of course, none of the people who were involved in making SOAKIE'S into a nightclub were paid out either. So this creates like this I would say fragmentation now, 20 years later, where our elders poured so much of their time, energy, and resources into building a space, and then the city takes it away, destroys it. And now, 20 years later, there's not really I would say, true third space for Black queer people here. And so what does that mean, you know? Well, what it means is bullshit. But how do we create Black queer fraternity now? And what do the people around Black queer folks, what is their responsibility to make ensuring this happens because they took it away from us? So SOAKIE'S Was Home tells our story in a physical timeline. So when you walk into the space, the first piece you'll see is called Past to Future. And you're immediately projected into the space. And when you walk in, I feel like when you walk in, it's kind of more bare looking forward, and you really have to like turn around or look behind you in order to see the history. And so I really want folks to consider when walking through this exhibition, what is their like literal and figurative placement among the materials. So that's how the entire exhibition is structured. So yeah, when you walk in, you're projected to the back of the space and you're immediately confronted with yourself and how you're showing up in this space. What is your responsibility within this context of SOAKIE'S? When you turn around, you'll see all of the collections on the back walls. The Gary Carrington collection, the Tisha Taylor collection, and the Style Car collection. As you continue venturing through the space and going forward, it goes from like frames and analog material to more like the digital elements, starts to bring you like to present day. So you'll see that all of those stack televisions there are just some trailers of some video histories I've taken in the present of Gary, Starlin, and Tisha, as well as a video poem I did of my friends. I feel like people have been like using camcorders and film like a lot now because it's sexy and fun and stuff. So I'm doing it too at the party. And I felt like it was important to insert that into the space here because I feel like since coming to Kansas City, it's a lot of that, like trying to like make it do what it do wherever we're at and just like have fun because we're with each other. And that adds context to why I'm doing this exhibition and why I think SOAKIE'S is important. reverse of those TVs, or opposite of those TVs, is like this recreation of the bar we tried to go for, which I think is really beautiful. Shout out SK for, or Lily and SK for putting up that wooden plate, because I wasn't doing that shit. And yeah, when you sit there, you'll be able to view 3 video histories of very silent teachers talking about what SOAKIE'S meant to them. And yeah, just a little bit of their time there. And they're all goofy and fun and cute. So yeah. Then, what else is in there? There's a diagram I have in there, the archival science for the archive BKKC. Well, y'all will just see it, I won't explain it. If you want to talk more about it or ask me questions, you can. But that is just a snippet from this article I wrote for syllabus. And that basically talks about why I'm doing this archive, why I'm doing certain things the way I'm doing it. And like the 3 key areas I'm trying to push with my archival science, that it's not just a passive collection process, that I'm trying to repair our historical record, that I'm trying to build power, that I'm trying to storytell beautifully and accessibly with the material. And then finally, at the back, there's just a space for reflection so that people can consider, if you're Black and queer, you know, what does Black queer futurity for us look like? How do we ideate into the future? And then, if you're not Black and queer, you know, how can you show up to make sure that these futures are coming true? But yeah, and then finally, these materials right here are just a student extension of the work. So this is really exciting and I think important to me because these are all students from Kansas City Art Institute's Black Student Union and Pride Art Coalition. And these are all original works inspired from the archive. And if you really pay really close attention as you're looking through specifically the collections of the archive, you'll be able to see some of the people or some of the images that they took inspiration from and recreated. But I think this aspect is really beautiful, creating that intergenerational community. That isn't happening now because we don't have the space. But yeah, that's SOAKIE'S Was Home. Going forward and where the archive is at now, it's a primarily digital archive. And so right now, all the materials in Google Drive. And I'm building a website for the archive so I can make it publicly accessible online, beyond just the research I've done, just making like a more easily navigatable way for people to peruse the material. But a lot of this work came about because I'm specifically being anti-institution. So I'm in this like fellowship program with Gray Area called the Cultural Memory Lab, and we're moving all the material off of Google Drive into this decentralized storage system where basically everyone in the storage system is both a sender and a receiver, and it's really technical, so I'm not gonna go into it right now. But pretty much all that to say is that I'm trying to divorce the archive from using any institutional host. As I started with this whole talk talking about genocide and Palestine and destruction and like it's not only people being lost, it's their stories and the mementos. And so I'm really thinking a lot about that and how can I make this archive resilient and powerful and community owned and not let it fall into the hands of people who are corrupt and evil. But yeah, that's my talk. Thank y'all so much. That was all off the dome, so I hope it was good enough.
Do we want to open it up to like some questions? Yeah, does anyone have like specific questions for us?
I have a question. The photos that are framed, were they like in somebody's house in those frames, or did you frame them, or how did that happen?
Child, let me tell you. Yeah, the archive is all primarily digital, so all of those photos are reproductions, they're not originals. And yeah, all those frames are like Facebook Marketplace, we're working antiques. West Bottoms, Bella Patina, like shit like that. So yeah, I just wanted to use like a whole bunch of vintage framing to like insert people, because I could just use, you know, plain black art frames, but that's not cute.
No.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
this is excellent.
Thank you.
Like, I remember when you arrived in Kansas City and just hearing what your vision was and to see it coming to life is powerful. And I'm from here, so it makes me feel like I have space. So thank you. And then with that, like, what can we do to support you? Because I don't want this history to go away again.
Yeah, for sure. Unfortunately, money, but I've been having a lot of tension, like trying to fundraise or ask people for money, because I feel like where the money needs to be coming from is institutions and white people. So, really how you can support is showing up to things like this, you know, continuing to stay tapped in. Let me think. So, this summer, like I'm launching like this workshop series for the archive. It's like a popular education series. It's all invite only, and if you're like super curious about it, please come up and talk to me. But this workshop series, really the goal to come out of it is like I'm really testing like this idea of the American dream, or the American assumption, as W. Du Bois calls it. Specifically in connection with SOAKIE'S and having like this hyper-local analysis on it. And I'm saying all this because out of those workshops, I'm really trying to envision like more action-oriented ways like to engage the archive, you know? I'm really trying to take it out of like this passive collection lens. And so, you know, what does that look like? And I'm hoping like through the discussions that come with these workshops, I can rally more people together so that like, at the most like basic, just like representative way, putting a marker where your art house is. But maybe this can look like getting the city like to give like a certain lump sum towards like a space, or giving a space, donating a space to Black queer folks, you know, devoting resources to that. I think that what you'll hear in a lot of the elder histories about SOAKIE'S is that another one hasn't happened because of resourcing. So we need resources from these fuck ass white people. So I'm like, how do we engage that? What does that look like? And so that's really what I'm focused on right now, and I feel like how people can get engaged. Beyond that, I just have like little merchandise here and there that you should order. There's like a QR code to pre-order, and those are still up. Yeah, and then just stay in touch. Plug me into places. I would really appreciate that.
Do you have a 501c3, or have you considered going that route for resources?
That's a good question. So right now, the archive is fiscally sponsored by this arts organization in New York called The Field. I don't think I want to do a 501c3, but I don't know. I just like, I don't want
It's
to.
not as hard as you might think.
Yeah, but I don't want to do all the work of like lawyers, accounting.
Well, for a small, let's talk.
Yeah, okay, let's chat. Yeah, I think that also like the tension I have too, I'm gonna just keep it 100, is that I'm young and turned, so I'm not trying to get stuck in Kansas City. So once I create this nonprofit, I feel like I'm gonna get
To the
stuck.
moon.
Right. So sorry y'all, but that's also a little bit of it too, but let's chat. Yeah.
So always be location one.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah.
My question is like, do you have like a vision for how other communities, maybe like Black communities who in other parts of the country can like do the same thing that you're doing? Like, do you have, I'm curious to know if you have like a vision for like how, based on like your model of how you created Black queer KC, like other communities can like kind of follow that, kind of like anti-institutional community-led model?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. Thank you for asking that. So I'm kind of like in the middle of that right now, which is also kind of what I'm saying. But basically the program I'm in, the Cultural Memory Lab with Gray Area, basically what we're envisioning, this is gonna get a little bit technical, but just bear with me. So pretty much the idea is like, right now I'm like building a server in my house, and like this server is where I'm gonna put all of the archive onto, as well as this other stuff, so it's not in Google Drive. And basically like what we're envisioning like a model could be is like making these like kits, like server kits, where like we can like set people up with like that kit, some trainings, like some tip sheets or whatever for like how to start like a community archive in their place and put it in the decentralized web. And also too, like with this model, if we create like a network of kind of like these decentralized archives, the archive as a whole becomes like more resilient, because the reason this system is able to exist is because everybody's like a host, and like a sender and a receiver. So that's like the extent to which I've gone with it. In 2024, I was like spending a lot of time traveling across the country, like in different fellowships and stuff, and like talking to people about the work and telling them like what I'm doing here in Kansas City. I feel like this is like another aspect of it too, is that I feel like me, when I was coming here, if a lot of people looked at Kansas City, it would be like, ain't nothing happening over there. And there is, and every time I tell people about this story about SOAKIE'S, I mean, just like y'all were, they're like shocked or in awe. And so I feel like, what am I trying to say? That the pieces that I think I'm still figuring out is that I feel like a lot of how I did the work here is very context specific. I feel like SOAKIE'S comprises like a really big like nexus point in like how Black work community has played out over the past 20 years. And so in order for this work to happen in other cities, like I think the work needs to be context specific, because you just give like a blanket solution, like this is how these like institutional errors happen. So yeah, I think that's why we're like thinking about going like with a model where like we give people, or we identify like a community organization or a person or whoever, and like give them this like toolkit to be able to make it happen, and like they just do what they do. But yeah, I hope that answers. Okay. Who else got a question?
Any other questions? Alright.
Okay.
Cool.
Well, thank y'all so much.
Yeah.